I'm Mike Bouris, and this is Straight Talk.
It's time for Straight Talk with Mike Bouris. Let's get ready to rumble. And he's got this magnificent voice. And they put his name on the screen. It said Michael Buffer. I'm like, what? When I told him what I'm telling you about how people are stopping me, who is this guy? And I got this. I think that might be your brother. I go, Dad, what are you talking about? I have a brother? I get a rich hand to my throat. I'm like, why the F did you hit me? And he looked at me and he said, what are you going to do about it? And I just went pop, pop, and we just start going at it. Doors close, and there's like 10 floors going down, and Dana's like up against the wall like this, and the security guy's like this, and it was on. Mikey, I didn't tell anybody. Who's talking? He goes, Frank. He goes, Dana's telling everybody.
Everybody knows.
In life, you can have a diamond in your hand, and you can have a piece of coal. And it all comes down to marketing, no matter how great the product. If you don't market that diamond correctly, nobody's going to buy it. The cut man comes up to me and goes, Buff, did you hear that? I go, hear what? He goes, the entire audience just said, it's time with you. And these are Portuguese-speaking people. And I thought, ooh, it's working. Welcome. Thank you, Mark. Pleasure to meet you.
Same here. How many times have you been to Australia? Or to Sydney, more importantly?
Sydney, I think it's probably 4 or 5 times. Australia, probably close to 10. And I have to add one comment. I go to many cities all over the world. I love Sydney. This is one of the greatest Sydneys in the world. There's no question. Melbourne reminds me of New York. I've been to Perth, and other places. But I just love the country. The people are fantastic. And I can't say enough about your country. I really can't.
And what have you been doing? How long have you been in Sydney now? How long, for this trip? When did you arrive?
I got here Wednesday morning. When? And yesterday I filmed a national Australian commercial for a company I can't talk about, but it'll be out in about a month.
Awesome. You look unbelievable. Look, how dapper is this dude? Seriously? They had in the brief.
Thank you.
What a dress up. And I've been doing podcasts myself today. Normally I just wear a t-shirt and a pair of jeans and blah, blah. But one of the reasons I was slightly late coming in is because I had to race back to my office, quickly take a shower and get changed. And I at least put a pair of trousers on, knowing that I know you're going to be dressed up, looking to look magnificent. Like, seriously.
Thank you.
Now, you're 67 years of age.
67. I turned May 21st.
Yeah. I'm June 21st. So, but at 67 years of age, you look awesome.
Thanks.
What's your secret?
Eat right, train right, be right, keep stress to an absolute minimum. I don't put anything in my body, the steroids and all that kind of stuff. I don't do anything. I just keep it natural. I try to get everything from my food, get plenty of sleep, and which is not always easy for me to do. And stress is not always to keep low, but just do the best I can.
Because I asked Dana the same question. And Dana actually has, this week because he did a thing with Gary Brecker.
Gary Brecker, yeah.
And Dana says he swears that Gary Brecker's changed his life.
Well, he did, because Gary Brecker told him he was going to be dead in 11 years, 10 or 11 years. He actually has this test he can pinpoint within a very close period of time when you're going to die. And Dana didn't believe it at first, but then he believed it. And I got to say, the transition that Dana's gone through with Gary Brecker is nothing short of amazing.
He looks unbelievable.
No, it's incredible what he's gone through. And the stress and the amount of effort and time and energy he puts into his job, running everything from UFC to Power Slap to all the other things he's involved with. I mean, Dana's a maverick. He's just a nonstop machine. There's no question. And one of the other things I want to tell you, too, is that laughter is very important in life. You want to laugh as much as you can. And hopefully you're surrounded by people that love you and share that laughter with you. And the people you surround yourself with can also have an effect on your aging. And I'm also got Italian heritage, so I got some good oils going through my skin.
Can I go back to when you were a little kid? So where were you born in the U.S.?
I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma. My dad told me that I was conceived in Las Vegas, dropped off in Tulsa. We were there for 9 months. Then we moved to Dallas, Texas for a few years, and Philadelphia is my hometown. I declare my hometown. We were there the rest of the time, and at 15, I moved to Malibu, California. And everybody thought you had to be rich to live in Malibu, which was not true back then. We were middle class. My dad worked for Fortune 500 companies and was an entrepreneur in his own right, where I got my entrepreneurial spirit and teachings from. And we went to Malibu. He was running a company out there. He quit it within a year to become a writer. He was an accomplished book writer and screenwriter, and he wanted to follow that path. And we wound up going broke as a family 2 or 3 times when I was younger. And together as a family unit, we got together and we would go and trade collectibles at antique gun shows. And we would trade back and forth. My dad created a big living out of this. And I was hawking and schmocking and selling stuff at 12 years old across tables, whether it were pistols, artifacts, whatever. And it really built my entrepreneurial spirit. I learned a lot back then.
That's a really important thing, Bruce. Like, how important is it for a young man, a young woman, to be exposed to front of counter? Like, you know, like you go through school and you're protected, you live in these instructional environments, and, you know, they give you a textbook and that's what you learn, they give you homework, that's what you got to submit, and then you've got your exams at the end of the year, then you go on a holiday, blah, blah. But we very rarely get taught how to address people, how to talk to people, how to engage with people, how to stand at a counter and do, let's call it customer service, but all the relationship stuff that goes with it. I mean, people might know you as an announcer, but he's actually an entrepreneur, and I'm going to talk about his entrepreneurial life in a moment. But I do want to ask you, as an important point, as terms of training for anybody, how important is it to be behind a counter and have to deal with people?
It's very important. A lot of talent, they're good in front of the camera, but behind the camera is difficult for them. With the teachings I learned in life at an early age, and again from my dad, and I want to preface by saying when I would walk into a room when I was a kid, I go, "Hi, Dad." He goes, "Son, project your voice, shoulders back, chest out, let them know you're in the room."
Really?
My dad was a Marine for 13 years, served in World War II in Korea, and was a drill instructor, so I grew up with that whole... He was teaching me how to fight at 5 years old before I even went to school, knowing I was going to get in the fight in Philadelphia when I went to school. But he taught me a lot about that. And in front of the camera, I love being in front of the camera. But I managed my brother, the great Michael Buffer, the legendary Michael Buffer, Let's Get Ready to Rumble. I've managed his career for over 30 years. And before I even got into announcing, which we'll discuss in the UFC, I was cutting deals and acting as a manager. And I don't have pardon me if there's any agents in the room. I'm not a big fan of agents, but I am a fan of managers. They get the work done. And I approach everything I do with a very passionate approach. Because if you can find what you love in life and you're passionate about and you can monetize it and you get to earn money from that, then you're living a lifestyle. You're not just going to work. And that's one of the greatest blessings you can have as an entrepreneur. And I realized that, and I applied those same principles to my management of him, to myself, to when I meet people. I mean, what's the biggest thing people want to do, you should do as a human being when you walk in a room is look the person in the eye, right? Not down at the ground, not left and right. Let them know you're in the room. Let them know you want to talk to them. Ask for the sale. Close the deal. You know, people are sometimes really good at opening the door, but they don't know how to close it. There's a difference.
Big difference. A huge difference. And if I could just go back, I mean, the story, as I understand it, is that you didn't know your brother was your brother.
Nope.
And can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
I'll give you the short version.
Yep.
Otherwise, we'll be here for another 20 minutes, but on this story alone. Very quickly, back in the, I would say the mid-'80s to late 80s, Mike Tyson became very popular in boxing. And he brought boxing back to the forefront where it was the water cooler conversation on a Monday, the way the UFC is today for the fight fans, and boxing for big fights too. I'm not saying, I love boxing, by the way. Believe me, I love boxing. When that was happening, my dad, even out of the womb, had me watching boxing because my dad was a boxer. My grandfather was champion of the world in boxing in 1921. His name was Johnny Buff. He was the flyweight bantamweight champion. And it's in our blood. So I was always watching boxing, Tuesday night fights, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday, Wide World of Sports, all that. All of a sudden, this man came out. And you never really paid that much attention to the ring announcer. But this very handsome, debonair, exquisitely dressed individual came out, and he's like, "Let's get ready to rumble." And he's got this magnificent voice. And they put his name on the screen. It said Michael Buffer. And I'm like, what? Now, I own telemarketing companies in my 20s and my 30s. And that's how I cut my teeth in business at 18, right into college. I went into telemarketing, which taught me a lot, too. That's a whole other story. I sold good products, sold off supplies. I didn't cheat people like the Wolf of Wall Street. I did it very legitimately. I made a lot of money at it. But before the internet, I saw every phone book in the country, which I would train the salespeople how to work out of. I never saw my last name in a phone book. Now, all of a sudden, I'm looking on the screen. It says Buffer. I go, what is this? So about 6 months later, as he starts getting popular, people are stopping me. My friends are stopping me saying, "Is that your brother, Michael Buffer, the guy that goes, 'Let's get ready to rumble'?"
How do you look?
How do you look?
Like you.
Well, he's really handsome, so I don't want to say that he like me. Some people say we look alike. I go, "Thanks very much. I appreciate that." But I said, "No, my brother's Brian, who I grew up with my whole life, my older brother." And it got to the point that it happened so much, I just got this sixth sense and this gut feeling. I started calling the offices of Don King and Bob Arum and other people in the boxing business. Who is this guy? What is he? And I found out he grew up in New Jersey, very close to where I grew up in Philadelphia. And I found all these close-knit things. So one time he was out doing a fight in Los Angeles at a small place called the Reseda Country Club. And we were watching it on TV, and my brother Brian and I pushed my father to call the venue and leave a message for Michael to call him. Well, Michael called him back. They met for lunch. It turned out to be his son. My dad never told me. He never told me that Michael existed. So what happened is that we were driving up north one day, and this is before I had to make that phone call, and I told him what I'm telling you about how people are stopping me, who is this guy, and I got this. I think that might be your brother. I'm 28 years old. I go, Dad, what are you talking about? I have a brother? His son, I never told you. I was 20 years old. It was World War II. I was going off to the Pacific to do my duty. I was married at a young age. I came back 9 months later. A child was born. A divorce ensued. And the last time I saw the child was when he was 2.5. It was just one of these strange stories. So Michael was raised under the name of Huber. And he was raised by foster parents that his mother put him with, but he was never formally adopted. So when he was 20 years old himself and he went in the Army, they said, during the Vietnam War, they said, you're not Michael Huber, you're Michael Buffer, right? Had that not happened, I probably would not be here talking to you today. It's amazing how life has the forks in the road that take place. And he said he grew up with a Leave It to Beaver lifestyle. He had great foster parents. And when he and my dad got together, they got along famously, and we all got together. And I started going to Vegas to go to the fights, and we'd go out, we'd have fun together, we'd party together, the whole bit. And I had an epiphany. And I owned 2 companies. I was making tremendous money back in around 93, 94. And I saw the Riddick Bowe Evander Holyfield fight. It was November 16th, 1994, if I'm not mistaken, 93. And I may be wrong on the date, so pardon me about that. And it was watching that fight in Vegas when I saw everybody jumping out of their seats when he did the Rumble. I went back to my hotel room, and instead of going to play blackjack and partying and having the fun we like to have in Vegas, I couldn't stop. I started writing down 3 pages of notes. Put them on the football fields, put them here, commercials, TVs, toys, trademark this phrase, let's get ready to rumble, make it part of American culture. And I thought to myself, wow, he's never even made a hat or a T-shirt, never had an agent. And I met with him later, and I said, I want to make you richer and more famous than you ever dreamed, hopefully myself in the process. But to do this, I'm going to sell both my companies. I'll quit with the money I have in the bank. I need to be your manager and an equal partner if I create a video game or a toy or something like that. And I guarantee you, I'm going to make you bigger than you've ever been and the whole 9 yards. He goes, well, how are you going to do all that? I said, I don't know. I really don't, but I'll figure it out. I just need to know you're cool with it and let me go to work. So I started traveling the country with him, shaking hands, taking names, taking cards, making calls, going to trade shows. He had trademarked the phrase, but not properly to really protect it. I met with attorneys and formally trademarked it. And if I could segue for a second, one of the things that got me the trademark idea that's happening right now is Pat Riley was coaching the Chicago Bulls basketball team. They had three-peated, and he trademarked three-peat. And I read an article where he made $1.5 million in licensing by trademarking. I wasn't aware you could trademark a phrase. That gave me the idea, along with other emphasis, to go in there and get that 5 words of air, let's get ready to rumble, trademark properly. And now, some 30 plus years later, the Kansas City Chiefs, who I hope do not beat Philadelphia because I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan, are playing in the Super Bowl. And if Kansas City wins for the 3rd time, it just came out in an article a couple weeks ago that Pat Riley stands to make millions of dollars because he owns this trademark, three-peat.
Three-peat.
Yeah.
So everyone in this room is now thinking about Penrith Panthers, and they're coming for their 5-peat this year if they do it. That's a great story. Probably more importantly, from my point of view, like, how do you build a relationship with, outside your business relationship with your brother, how do you build a personal relationship, and how was that process? How did you undertake that process, as well as being his business partner?
Sure. Well, when you make people millions of dollars, they sometimes have a tendency to be your best friend.
They tend to like you, yeah.
But aside from that, all kidding aside, Michael and I have always gotten along very well. He's a great guy. We did not grow up together. We are very similar in many ways. We are not similar in many ways. And from day one, we always got along. And the one thing I do is I always talk and act with total honesty. And that's very important when you're doing business with somebody. And I've never done anything in business where being the announcer that I am today, where I put myself before him, I still, as his manager, it's all about him. Something comes from me, I keep everything totally separate. So I just treat it on the up and up. I treat it on the best level. And we've had a lot of fun creating this. And actually, what we've done together is studied in trademark law. I found out at universities in American college that we're a subject of trademark law because of what we've done with Let's Get Ready to Rumble, which is an honor. You know, there's a lot of experiences in life we've had. I've had, as we've all had, but I've had tremendous experiences. I can go on and on and tell you, whether it's in sports and entertainment, things I've done, people I've met. And yeah, making money is really great, but obviously an emphasis to do everything that I love, because I love making money. But the experiences and the enhancement you get from the experiences and the character buildup you get from the experiences are so valuable in themselves too. And we both cherish all these experiences together.
Have you always been the archetypal marketing person, or better still, recognizing or understanding where there is an opportunity to market something very well? And let's forget about making money out of it at this stage, but just, I know this is something that will resonate with consumers of whatever the type of consumer. There could be an audience, could be retail consumer, could be, in your case, boxing or UFC. Have you always been that type of person? Like, and then where does that come from? Like, was that something you learned growing up, or is it in your DNA?
Well, you learn through reps, you learn through experience, you learn through trial and error, you learn through doing. But at an early age, and again, and I will give my dad a lot of the credit, to recognize something that could be more than it is. Because in life, you can have a diamond in your hand and you can have a piece of coal. And it all comes down to marketing, no matter how great the product. If you don't market that diamond correctly, nobody's going to buy it. You have that piece of coal, like the pet rock from years ago or whatever.
Yeah, I remember.
And you market it correctly, and it sells millions and millions of dollars. So I like to market diamonds, and I like to put the marketing behind the diamonds. And I will only get behind something, and I marketed numerous different products. I've created products, branding myself with my It's Time that I have out now. I will only get behind something that I truly believe in.
You said something really interesting before, that before you went to your brother, you sat down and wrote all this stuff down, took all these notes everywhere. And I'm just looking around here, and I talk at a lot of functions like this. How important is it, do you think, is to take notes?
If you don't write it down, it's not going to happen. It's that simple. You have an idea now, and you think about three things, you're going to forget two of them, right? One of them, maybe the most important one. If you have an idea, write it down. If you saw my desk at home, I've got the little stick-em sheets, all over the place. And then when it comes to something I'm going to work on, I create a file, I create notation, the whole bit. Write it down. Write it down. Definitely.
And do you think writing it down is for the purposes of just remembering it, or is it for the purposes of embedding it in your system of thinking? In other words, it becomes part of your thinking process. I mean, I take, and it's a really good point. I mean, I take the view, for example, and I have this thing called a playbook for business, and chapter 2 is about what I call playing defensive. And what it's about is making sure that you reduce to writing every single part of your business, like who turns the lights on in the morning at the factory, and what time, and who turns the furnace on and up to what temperature. So if something ever happens to you, someone can pick it up and go and do it. Is it part of a process? Is it actual intellectual property, writing this stuff down?
Well, you mentioned something, and what you were just saying is embedding it in your brain.
Yeah.
Right? So as you write it down and you look at it, hopefully it's getting embedded in your brain so you have the recall factor that comes in to remember. You know, if you can't possibly add up the amount of thoughts you have every day of your life, but you can remember the important ones that you write down.
Yeah.
Right? And let's say I'm trying to think, what did I decide to do last week? I'll just go to my notes and I'll check it, whether it's in the daily log of my iPhone or something I wrote as an email to myself. But in my computer, I keep files and everything. If I have an idea, there's a file. And even if I don't even act on that idea for 2 years, I can go back to that file and look at it.
It's very important. I'm just looking at you. Honestly, I'm just blown away how well dressed you are, like beautifully dressed you are.
Oh, thank you.
But you didn't need to do it for us today because it's a Friday afternoon, Sydney summer. You're not up on the stage like you will be on the weekend, announcing the fights. But you're on brand. And many years ago, when before your president was president, when he was doing the same show as I did here in Australia, I sat down with him and he told me how important it is to be on brand. And that person on brand, became the president of the United States twice.
Right.
How important is it to you? Is it to be on brand all the time? And obviously, outside of this room, you'll go and put your pajamas on or something. But I'm talking about on brand when it's important. How important is that to you?
Well, it's if you want to create and you set out to create a brand, right? And it's not necessarily just that you're creating a product and a brand. You are a brand. As a human being, you are your brand. But you want to stick to your brand and be uniform and consistent. Consistent? Remember that word, consistent? Consistency is key to your brand. And that comes down to like the most simplistic things. In this day and age of social media and internet and all, your company name, your website, your business card, your account on Instagram, Twitter, it should all be the same name. If you deviate from the brand, then you're creating two brands, right? So you want everything to be the same. So if you call yourself ABC Company, well, look me up on my Instagram. I'm ABC. I'm ABC Company. On my website, it's abc.com. On my product, it's ABC Energy Drink, whatever. Keep the brand uniform and consistent because that way it creates brand awareness. You might ask yourself a lot of times in these commercials that you see on the Super Bowl or big games here in Australia or whatever, and you look at a commercial for 30 seconds, they just spent millions putting it on TV, and you go, what was that about? What was the product, right? Even on the Super Bowl this year, I guarantee you half the commercials, I'm not even going to remember what the product was because it wasn't done correctly on the branding. You want to create branding and you want to create it. Excuse me, I'm just telling you my opinion. This is just my opinion, okay?
But that's what I want to hear.
Yeah, okay. So have you ever heard that theory, keep it simple, Sam? Keep it simple, Susan? Okay? I keep it, well, I have a hard time saying the word ugly and stupid. It's very hard for me to say that because I think everybody's beautiful in their own right and smart in their own right, but we all know who's stupid. No, just kidding. I'm just joking. But you want to keep it simple because then it's easy to remember. You know, a lot of times people sit back and they'll think, well, how can I just recreate this, right? Honestly, except for technology, there's nothing that really hasn't already been done. You know, I got blown away when the potato chip clip was invented, right? Little chip at the top of the bag. It's the most simplistic ideas in the world can still be made and you can make a lot of money out of it. But keep it simple. So people, you don't ever want to put yourself in a position of weakness where you have to over-explain yourself as to who you are and what you're doing, right? And we live in a world of ADD. This is an ADD society. I'm sure it's probably similar in Australia as it is in America. People want the quick hit. They want the quick this. They want to know in 20 seconds. You've got about 20 seconds, maybe 30, to make your point, to create your excitement. Would you agree with this one?
Yeah, totally.
So this is it. You're going in there. You got to throw that first punch. You got to create that emphasis. Wow, this guy's really, it's interesting. Tell me more, right? I want it. Okay? You got to create that kind of an attitude in people.
And when I see you sitting here, you have not disappointed in terms of the way you'll clothe yourself. I mean, and Trump's the same. Trump has been wearing the same, not the same clothes, but the same style of clothes forever. So I interviewed him in 2015 or 16. I can't remember exactly which year it was, and he was the red tie, the pinstripe suit.
I'd love to see his closet. It's probably blue.
Yeah, everything.
Red.
But you haven't disappointed either. So I think what's important in these situations, and Bruce is a bigger expert on this stuff than I am, but if you are a brand, which he is, he's a brand, and he's created a brand around himself. You know, not only by what he says, it's time, etc. And clearly, let's get ready to rumble with his brother. But he has created a brand for himself. It's important that you don't disappoint when you turn up to an audience. This is a small audience, but even if it's a bigger audience, on Sunday when you're presenting yourself in front of the millions of people who'll be watching on pay-per-view and at the stadium, you will not disappoint. And it's important that you continue to do the same thing every time.
Absolutely. Walking into this room, seeing the 200-300 lovely people that are here. Thank you so much for coming. I'm very honored the fact that you even want to hear me say my name or say anything. I still say humble about everything. Every day I do something. Every time I walk in the octagon, it's the first show I've ever done. It's the first event I've ever done. Being in front of you all here and 200-300 people is just as important to me to look good and speak well and hopefully help you or enhance you or motivate you for 10 minutes, 10 days, 10 years, or 2 minutes, whatever. Then I've done my job. It's about what you do with it. But walking in here now and walking in the octagon on Sunday in front of 15, 20,000 people and the millions watching on TV, these are both just as important to me. And I got to keep that passion, because if I don't maintain that passion for what I do, it's time for me to say, I'm done. You know? I mean, I love the paycheck. I love making money. Am I doing well? Could I retire? You know, yeah, I could retire, but I mean, am I going to retire with the full knowledge that I will never have to worry about anything the rest of my life? I love what I do, right? And the moment I stop loving what I do, then I'll start loving something else.
You do something else.
Yeah.
It's interesting. He's got a ring on his finger here, on his right hand, on his forefinger, and it says UFC.
Yeah.
What's that? What's that ring? Can you tell us about that?
Well, it's an octagon. It's UFC. When I turned 50, I had this made as a gift to myself, and I never knew there were black diamonds. I never knew that black diamonds existed. Wow. 2 months later, the movie Blood Diamond came out with Leonardo DiCaprio, and I felt like an idiot because I had black diamonds put on my bracelet. But anyway, it is what it is. I wear this ring in the octagon with pride. I had another ring which was BB, a B ring, my family ring. But I really love this. The UFC actually made this for me. I didn't design this. I designed this. And I love it. Except if I ever get it to go, right? And I hit somebody with this, it's going to say UFC on their cheek, and they're going to... I'm done. I'm going to be arrested probably within about 2 hours.
but by the way, what I wouldn't mind just quickly talking about is that you have a black belt in one of the martial arts.
I have 3 black belts. I have a second-degree black belt in Tang Soo Do, and I'm a black belt in a style called Jiu-Jitsu Do, but I am not a Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I want to say this right now. Can I do Jiu-Jitsu and the years of observation and my martial arts training? Yes, but not as a black belt. I used to go in and train a French savant fighter who created this style, Jiu-Jitsu Do, and I would go in and train his black belts in striking. And after about 8 months of training him in striking, he presented me with a black belt. But I will never ever say I'm truly a Jiu-Jitsu black belt. It's just one of the black belts I hold. But I kickboxed for 12 years very seriously, and I was always fighting. I was doing martial arts. I'm a surfer. Malibu, we surfed, we did martial arts. I trained with Chuck Norris's fighting partners. I've been in martial arts since I was 12, and when the UFC came on the scene, I knew it was my world.
So can you just quickly tell us then the story about when you were in the lift with Dana, you've been out having a few drinks, and you got in a blue, what we call a blue in Australia.
What do you call it?
We call it a blue.
A blue?
A punch-up. We call it a blue.
A blue.
Or a stink.
Oh. Because you're black and blue or blue? That's interesting.
Hopefully not you, the other dude. So maybe you should tell the story. I mean, I can have you tell the story as I've heard it, but you could tell the story. Like you and Dana being out drinking or something like that, and you got in the lift and there was a UFC fighter in there.
Yeah.
And his name was?
Frank Trigg.
Trigg.
He was a top 10 welterweight in the world about a year before that happened. He had just got bounced from the UFC because he lost 3 fights. We're friends. And my dad taught me as a kid, he said, you're going to go to school. I was in Philadelphia at the time. He goes, they're going to stand you up. You're going to get pressed for your lunch money. You're going to get pressed by the bullies. Just punch them right in the nose. Just punch them, fight them. If you get beat up, you get beat up. But if you don't, you're going to get picked on the rest of your life. So nobody puts their hands on me. I don't care who you are. It's just not the thing to do. I will not put my hands on you. I don't expect you to put your hands on me. So anyway, with that being said, we had just done a show in Vegas, a fight night, and Mike Goldberg, the commentator at the time, and Frank Trigg, we all went to Mike's room and we had a drink, and we were going to go out, and we're all friends, right? So we're on the 10th floor of the Hard Rock Hotel, and we go to the elevator, and we're laughing and joking, and the elevator opens up, and there's Dana and a security guy, Tom. Now, I'm the last to walk in. Frank Trigg, he wants to get back in the octagon. Here's Dana, and if you can picture this, here's Dana and his security guy. Mike Goldberg goes here. Frank Trigg goes here. And now I'm walking in. And Frank immediately is like, Dana, when are you going to put me back in the octagon? I want to fight. Da-da-da-da. And as I'm walking in at the door, I noticed Dana had this incredible watch band on. And I love watches. So I just reacted. I just leaned over. Dana, that's such a cool watch. I really like that. And all of a sudden, I get a ridge hand. He's back here. And I get a ridge hand to my... Oh, that sounds pretty good. I get a ridge hand to my throat, which is a cheap shot, as we call it. I can call it something else, but I want to be polite. And I turn around and I look at Frank, and I'm like, Frank, you hit me. I go, why the F did you hit me? And he looked at me and he said, what are you going to do about it? My streak kicked in, and I just went pop, pop, and it was on. And the doors closed, and there's like 10 floors going down. So then the doors closed after I pop them because I stepped in the elevator, and Dana's like up against the wall like this, and the security guy's like this, and I wasn't looking at what they were doing, and we just start going at it, and we're in a place called the Hard Rock Hotel in Vegas, which, has anybody ever been there, the Hard Rock Hotel? Well, when you go down to the first floor in the lobby, it's all glass encasements, right? And, we're slamming each other, right? And I'm thinking, the door's open. We get down to the bottom. He kneed me. I shoulder turned him against the wall. I was going to, do whatever. And I feel the doors opening, and I threw my arms in the air, and I go, Frank, we're done. Because I knew we would go out of the elevator, probably go through the glass, right? Who knows what was going to happen. And I'm not about to embarrass the UFC and whatever. So I had the wherewithal to stop the fight at that point. And then, kind of laughing. It was a fun go. And there's blood up and down my shirt. I look down my hand. My thumb is peeled back. I can see the bone in my thumb, and blood's gushing everywhere. And I guess I cut it on one of his rings or his belt buckle. Things happen. And Dana's like enjoying the heck out of it. and so anyway, we said goodbyes, this and the other. I went to the I went to the paramedics who were there in the hotel because we just got done doing the fights. And I go, guys, can you super glue it shut? I go, Bruce, you need stitches. So I went to the hospital, the emergency ward, and this is the really short version. I went to the emergency ward, and the doctor comes in, and I can hear my voice in the next room. They're watching the repeat of The Ultimate Fighter I did early that day. And he walks in, he looks up at me, he goes, for a doctor, he goes, what the F are you doing here? Right? And I go, well, here we go. So about 6-7 stitches, $500, tetanus shot, go back with a wrapped thumb, go out that night, have a good time, doing what you do in Vegas. And I left it at that. And I told my parents, I told my brother, I don't talk about fights. They happen. 2 days later, a fighter named Mikey Burnett comes up to me and he says, hey, Buff. I go, what? He goes, I heard you took it to Trig. I go, what? Mikey, I didn't tell anybody. Who's talking? He goes, Frank. He goes, Dana's telling everybody.
Everybody knows.
So then it became like an urban legend, and Dana, we get along great. Dana's an amazing person. He's the reason we're here where we are today, along with everybody's efforts. He called me up a couple years ago or a few years ago, whenever it was, and they made an animated show on the elevator fight. And my life, he goes, Buff, wait till you see this is the best thing we ever did. I go, you just can't stop talking about it, can you?
And what's amazing is Dana just stood back and let it happen. And I was watching him in the press, on all the presses of the last couple of days. And Strickland was out there getting stuck into everybody, and Dana was just like, someone was asking some questions of Sean, and Sean, in his inimitable way, was sort of giving everybody cheek and putting in the swear words and blah blah blah, and the camera zoomed over to Dana, and Dana just standing there laughing his head off. He's just letting it go, and Strickland was basically saying, "Look, I'm here fighting for freedom of speech. I'll say what the fuck I like." Basically, that's what he's using actually more colourful words than that. But the great thing about Dana is he does not try to coach anyone in the way that they have to address the media, and probably more importantly, and I think it's one of the big successes of the UFC, he allows people to be authentic, and that's one of the great things about UFC is authentic. And I just don't mean individuals are authentic when the way they express themselves, and however they want to express themselves, but what's authentic about it is it's not a stitch up. And I know you love boxing, I love boxing too, and I'm very close to boxing in Australia, but UFC, there's no bullshit. You fight the person in your weight division who's next in line to fight. You don't fight the 15th guy if you're at the top of the tree. You don't control it. UFC sets the fights. They're the matchmaker. As in boxing, you've got a manager trying to do it. And we don't always see the best outcomes. And I think that whole authenticity, that authentic piece that Dana's created is amazing, like absolutely amazing.
It is amazing. By the way, segue back, I don't ever say in that fight in the elevator that I betray. I don't talk like that, okay? What happened, friendly tete-a-tete between two friends, and I come from the school that you have one and you have a beer afterwards.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Nowadays, you get shot. Or
what happens in the elevator stays in the elevator.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So getting back to what you're saying is, in boxing, one of the things about boxing, loving it the way I do, there's so many promoters and top fighter here, top boxer here, but do they ever meet? Right? The UFC has the hundreds or however many fighters they have on the roster, and the best always fight the best. And of course, he has to negotiate with the managers and the agents and all that, but he gets the job done, right? And he's providing entertainment. Dana wants to give you the best entertainment that we can give you with the best fighting the best. And the man is I don't even know if he sleeps. He's just constantly on the go doing what he's doing. And I will say it again. It is a joy. It is an honor to work for Dana. It'll be 29 years from me, February 16th of this month, that I stepped in the octagon, 29 years. My first fight was UFC 8 in Bahama in Puerto Rico, where I announced the prelims. But watching the evolutionary process of when Dana took over the UFC about 3-4 years after I started to where it is today, it's just amazing to be on this rocket ship going uphill and having a first-class seat and seeing everything that I've been able to see and experience. And I don't think we would be here if it wasn't for Dana White and the Fertitta brothers, who were his partners back then, and the powers that be involved, because we were in danger of going out of business before he took it over.
He's taken to a whole new level, obviously.
Whole new level. I think boxing has learned, as we've learned from boxing, I think boxing has learned with what he's done with the UFC, and
I hope so.
I want everybody to be successful, whether you're a boxing promoter, another MMA promoter, or whatever. We all have the right to be successful. Just do it right and treat the fighters right.
So a lot of people in this room probably don't know this, but Dana comes from a very humble background, and he was a boxer himself. Then he became a boxing trainer, and he had a bit of drama in wherever he was training and had to move away. But he's one of those individuals who's, it wasn't like he was born into it or inherited it from his parents or whatever, and he had to make a commitment towards it and take a leap of faith with the Fertitta brothers and buy into it in the beginning. Sure, he's done very well, made a lot of money. What are the things that you've observed, and you're a very close person to UFC and Dana in particular? What are some of the things that you've observed, maybe even learned, about being a good business person by watching Dana White? Like, he would have to be one of the most successful business people relative to that brand and that business in the world today.
Well, we get back to the consistency level. He's very consistent in his efforts. He's very passionate about what he does. And through the trial and error that he went through in the beginning, because there was trial and error, they basically, his partner, the Fertitta brothers, whether it was Lorenzo or his brother, told him, hey, it's time to sell it. We're 44 million in the hole, right? And Dana wound up getting a buyer and again, my numbers could be off, so please excuse me, getting a buyer for around 7-8 million, whatever it was, if I read it correctly. And then they decided not to do it, and they rolled the dice by paying to have a show done called The Ultimate Fighter. And they just never lost their passion, and they wanted to make this thing happen, and they went through it thick and thin, and luckily with the pocketbooks that they had. And when we had the first season of The Ultimate Fighter on Spike TV, it came down to the final event in that fight, which was between Forrest Griffin and Stephan Bonner. And if you understand TV ratings, a 1, a 2, a 3, during that final event, which was such an incredible fight, I think they scored like a 12 or higher rating. Everybody was tuned into the show, which made the show a hit. Everybody started watching it, and suddenly at that point, we started propelling again as the UFC. So it's like, if you believe in yourself, as he does so well, don't give up. Keep pushing, keep going. There is a point where you have to realize it's time to get up from the table and find another game. That's true of every business, and you got to be realistic about that in yourself too. But he realized that, hey, okay, yeah, we're 44 million in the hole. We just spent all this money on the show, but now we're taking off again. Let's keep going. Let's keep going, and it just kept taking off.
You're a big thinker, and Dana's a big thinker too. How important is it to, once you've got the thing right, and you said consistency, and you've got to be consistent, but how important is it to start to continue to innovate as well? So innovate your product, innovate around your product.
Well, I always say that the hardest thing in business is not getting there. It's once you reach that plateau, it's maintaining that and staying there. That's the hardest part. And that's where you want to stay, again, with your consistency, your passion, and don't give up because, I made it. Now I can relax a little bit. Not really. Now's the time to really pay attention to everything that needs to be done when it comes to the branding and the consistency of the branding and keeping the awareness out there and the quality of your product and the salespeople, everybody involved in the company. And Dana was a very big micromanager. Not that he's not still. And had us, watching over everything. And he still is to a large extent, but he's surrounded himself with a great team. He has a great team of people. And that's very important to you too. Who's on your team? Who are the people that are backing you up? You get sick, you can't go to work, You want to take a vacation. You want to do whatever. Who is your team? Are you a one-man, one-woman army? Are you a team? And the quality of your team. And it's almost like it's a family, and you want to keep that family atmosphere. But you still gotta govern your business with a strong arm, right? Make sure people are doing their job and treat correctly. I know I'm kind of segueing away from your question a little bit, and I apologize for that.
No, that's good.
But one thing I want to say too is that when you have a company and you have people working for you, sure, you want to pay them correctly, you want to make them happy, they love doing what they're doing, they're getting paid properly. But I'll tell you, one of the biggest things that's missing in a lot of companies that I see is walking up to somebody and patting them on the back and telling them they do a good job, making them feel appreciated. And that's worth thousands of dollars to some people. They just want to be appreciated and know they're part of a team. And I don't see that a lot of times in businesses.
Is Dana like that though?
Oh yeah, he takes great care of his people. That I can see. Absolutely.
I mean,
he governs with a strong hand. You're going to work for UFC, you're going to work.
He's not, well, and he sort of came across to me as not somebody to be trifled with, but at the same time, this is extraordinarily, I don't want to use the word charming because it sounds a little bit fake. He wasn't, but he was engaging. Like, I wanted to talk to him, and he was making me feel as though he wanted to talk to me, and he had the Premier next to him. He had made me and the Premier look cool. Like, and that's pretty hard to do. Like, the poor Premier of New South Wales, he's dressed in his suit and everything. But the Premier actually is quite cool. And he loves MMA. He loves martial arts of every type. And but Dana was smart. He did not leave anybody out. So he would engage the Premier in the questioning. So it was, I was hosting it, but Dana knew when to talk to the Premier direct. He was very good at reading the room. And he's the leader of the organisation. He could easily say, listen, I'm a rich dude. I don't need to talk to you. I'll just do a 10-minute conversation. I'm out the door.
Right.
But he gave us extra time. He actually went on even further. And I know it's important to talk to the Premier of New South Wales, but he doesn't need to do it. It's going to happen whether the Premier likes it or not. The UFC, the event, it's going to be as popular whether the Premier comes on or not. So how important is it to be able to read the room? And whether it's 1-on-1 or 1-on-30, you do it.
It's very important. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at you. We're having a conversation, but I'm also talking to you too. It's everybody. We're all important. You're important. I'm important. Every single person in this room is important. And to sit here and think that any of you are not important, well, that's wrong. That's wrong. We're all equal. We prove ourselves in the pudding. We prove ourselves in what we do. But we're all created equal. I can't jump and sink a basket like Michael Jordan, but we're all created equal.
He can't say it's time.
Prove ourselves.
He can't say it's time though. Can I ask you about that? The phrase "it's time" is that your phrase?
Yes.
Yeah. And do you have that trademarked?
Yes.
You have that trademarked as well. And can I mean, you're 67 years of age, so your voice. I mean, how do you keep your voice as pitch perfect, particularly when the way you say it, you scream? I thought to myself, I'll try it. I tried it at home. I had this, and my voice all over the joint. Okay. I tend to talk much quieter. A lot of people tell me when they listen to my podcast, it actually makes them fall asleep. I don't know anyone in this room who fell asleep in my podcast, but I'm happy I can make you feel relaxed at least. But doing its time, what do you do? Is there some trick you do? Do you see a practitioner, a voice specialist to tell you, look, spray this in your mouth or whatever? What do you do? No, maybe there is some trick here.
Well, I'd like to start off by saying that when I first became an announcer managing my legendary brother, Michael, everybody thought you had to have a phrase. You had to be phrase driven. You had to start off with a phrase. So I didn't start off in announcing with a phrase. I never had a phrase. To me, it wasn't what I say, it's how I say it. But I also told myself in the first 3 years of starting out as an announcer, if I couldn't develop my own unique style and be recognized for my style and not recognized as Michael Buffer's brother, but be recognized as Bruce Buffer, then I was going to quit. I was going to give it up. So it was about 6-7 years into my announcing as I was perfecting. I look back the first time I announced, and I'm like, we're all different. We all evolutionary process of getting better with your tool. Every morning, I had a tendency, but one of the things I do in the morning when I'm shaving or looking in the mirror, I would say, it's time. I've been doing this for years. And because to me, that meant to me, it's time to have the best day I've ever had. It's time to be the best I can be. It's time to put it all together, right? So I realized at the end when you're announcing the main event, and this was something I learned from Michael, is when you go into the judges' names and the commission and all, you're creating all this excitement with this is the main event, but then you're naming all the judges, so you're taking the air out of the crowd. And you want to kind of bring them back in and create the excitement. So I thought, okay, well, the fans are watching on TV. This is a 6-7 hour show. They've been watching for, let's say, 5 hours. It's coming down to the main event. The people are in the audience. They are the same. They've been watching for 5 hours, coming down to the main event. The fighters have been training for 8 to 10 weeks, give or take. Now it's coming down to putting their blood, sweat, and tears on the line, the main event in their lives. It's time. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. And I thought, I started the show off. I used to start it off by saying, it's time to begin the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Like that, I would do it, start at the show. And then when Dana took over the UFC, I had the Godfather meeting. They flew me to Vegas and sat across the table from him. And he goes, I want you to stop saying that at the beginning of the show. And I'd like you to shorten your announcements a little bit. The announcement you did for Tito Ortiz and Evan Tanner in Atlantic City is the greatest announcement I've ever heard you make. I'd love for you to keep that same tempo. So I took what Dana told me and I followed it. And then I thought, if I'm not going to say it's time at the beginning, this could be really good to say at the end. So I started saying it, not with the bravado that I say it now, or I used to jump like 3 feet in the air and all this kind of stuff.
Throw stuff.
Yeah, I give a little jump now, but I blew my ACL in the octagon announcing Georges St. Pierre one time. Not jumping, just that's another story. I can tell you so many stories. Anyway, so it was 2003. We were in Brazil. We had just gone back to Brazil. We're in Rio, or I think Rio de Janeiro, or Sao Paulo, one or the other. And I did the It's Time, and I'm focused on the fighters. When I'm announcing, I'm looking into the eye of the tiger, right? I'm not even thinking. I'm thinking about the audience, but I'm not even focused on them. It's me and you, right? This is it. This is your moment. I'm here to enhance this moment for you before you put your life on the line as much as I can, and to make the fans as excited as I can. So I get out of the octagon and Stitch Duran, the Stitch man, the cut man, comes up to me and goes, Buff, did you hear that? I go, hear what? He goes, the entire audience just said, it's time with you. And these are Portuguese-speaking people. And I thought, ooh, it's working, right? And that's when I realized it was catching on. And then all of a sudden now I go to every city, and if you're going to go to the show on Sunday, chances are it'll happen there. And I'm honored and humbled by it. Trust me, I love it. It really makes me, it's the highest compliment I can get for what I'm doing, that aside from a fighter telling me how excited and how much he appreciated my announcing, or a little kid coming up to me. That's always the best thing, or anybody in particular. But anyway, that's when I realized, and you'll probably hear it on Sunday too. It's great.
I actually love. I mean, for me, it gets the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. I mean, I love the whole.
It gets
event.
my hair standing up too.
I love the whole event. It's so good. The entertainment quality, apart from the skills and the craft, the entertainment quality of everything, the whole lead up to Sunday, everything, and it ends up with you saying it's time. That's the very last bit of entertainment, apart from the fighters fighting each other.
Well, if you watch the fights from the very first fight, I'll come out and give a big push to get the show going, but it builds with each fight and crescendos into the main event where I let it explode. I call it roaring. I used to scream when I started out because I didn't know how to use my voice. You might ask yourself, how does a singer do 5 nights a week, 2 shows a night? How do they do that and still keep their voice?
Yeah, how do you?
They bring it from the diaphragm. Sorry about that. They bring it from the diaphragm, your diaphragm. I used to bring it right here, and I get a little hoarse after a show, so I learned how to control it. I never took voice lessons. You had asked me that earlier. Yeah. On the table when I'm working, I have like Hall's Mentholyptus and a cup of honey, right? And what I do is I coat my throat with honey in between each fight, a little water just to keep it smooth. But I've done the show with blown ACL, blown out back, laryngitis, 103-degree temperature. I don't tell anybody. I go in and do my job. I mean, the fighters are putting their lives on the line. I can certainly get through a night of announcing.
You've led an entrepreneurial life. You've done lots of different things, some really way out there things that I've found out in my research, which I'm not even going to touch on. Although it did have something to do with interviewing porn stars, which I've done too, by the way. There's nothing wrong with it. But some way out stuff. Maybe you probably did some things that weren't that successful as well. But you've done some things that are super successful. But entrepreneurs make a lot of sacrifices. Have you got any regrets of anything you may not have done in your life that you had to sacrifice as a result of being in this entrepreneur, always on it?
In business?
In everything, in anything in life, just life.
Sure. I think we all have regrets. I mean, absolutely. In a personal level, I lost my dad in 2018. I lost my beautiful mom, not last Christmas, but the Christmas before, who was my best friend, lived till 95. You know, mom, dad, my emphasis. I used to call her before and after every UFC. She'd say something like, "Why did Herb Dean let the fight go so long?" You know, it's like she just was so into it. She'd wear a UFC shirt, watching TV, the whole bit. You know, it's very important. I'm a very family guy. And maybe the one regret when it comes to family is that I've never been married. I always kid, I've never been married. I've almost been divorced twice, but I've never been married. Just kidding. Is that I didn't get married and have a child of my own, you know, or children of my own for my mom and my dad or my mom. And I do have one great thing, which she was with me, is that my partner, I have an amazing partner, the VP and partner I have in my company. Her name is Kristen. And we run this business together. We do more work out of my office than most mid-sized corporations, just the two of us. And we've worked together side by side for 27 years. I've known her for 30. And she got married like 23 years ago. And because we're such good friends, she honored me by allowing me to be godfather to her son.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like an uncle to her other son, Rupert. And I help raise these two boys because when I was traveling on the weekends, her husband's working during the week, and she's got the kids when they're 1 to 3 years old at the office, and I'm teaching them, feeding them, you know, changing diapers here and there, and going through the little thing. And it's one of the greatest experiences I ever had in my life. So at least I had that. So I had that on a business regret. And there's other personal things. You know, maybe you didn't give enough time to this person, or maybe you didn't develop this relationship over here.
But there's sacrifices you have to make.
There's sacrifices you have to make. And there's a lot of sacrifices in my business because the hardest part of my business is the travel. If you ask me what the hardest part is, it's the travel. Get me in the octagon, I'm a pig in a candy store. Or what is it? Kid in a candy store. Not a pig in a candy store. Maybe it's the same both ways. But, yeah, the travel, the sacrifices you make there, not spending time with your family, missing certain moments, and time with friends and such as that. But I try to make up for it as best I can. In business, I studied acting as I wanted to be an actor when I was a kid. Went to the Dallas Theater of Arts when I lived there and trained there. And I'm a real big movie buff. I was always fascinated with, you know, Errol Flynn and John Wayne, Steve McQueen, and who I had the pleasure of, Steve McQueen. You know Steve McQueen, of course.
We do.
Everybody knows Steve McQueen, the actor. When I moved to Malibu, his son was one of my best friends. He just passed away a few months ago, or 6 months ago. But I would spend almost every day in my life at Steve McQueen's house, surfing in front of his house. And we were really good friends the last 6 years of his life. You know, Mr. Cool, they call him.
Oh, he was a gun. I loved him.
Yeah, he was incredible. So getting away from that, sorry, I have a tendency to jump back and forth. My dad was a film buff, and I can talk film and movies all day long. You put me on Jeopardy, I'd probably have a chance of winning the show. So I was fascinated, you know, with certain actors like Errol Flynn. I loved his lifestyle. I loved what he did. And I thought, how cool would it be to be an actor, right? And at 18 in Malibu, I was approached by a producer who produced some really big films, and why don't you come in and see me? And I never went for that meeting, you know, little things you didn't do where I could have maybe taken that shot. But I'm fine. I don't miss it.
No regrets.
No regret.
No regrets.
I've lived a beautiful life. I wouldn't change anything for the world. I would maybe enhance certain aspects of it or build on certain aspects of it, but I'm very, very happy with the way my life has gone. Very, very happy.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the ultimate entrepreneur and a great entertainer. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it.